Welcome back to the Marianne Hickman Show. This is Talk Tips number 40. And the question we're answering today is, how do I make my keynote a memorable one? And side note, I want it more than memorable. I want it to be a keynote that gets you invited back on more and bigger stages. Check it out. Okay, let's talk memorable. And I want it to be memorable for the right reasons, not memorable because you fell off stage or because you tripped over your keynote powering down or you totally just lost yourself on stage. Trust me, people will remember that too. But I want you to be memorable in a way where people are like, oh my gosh, when are you speaking again? Where can I hear this again? I'm going to invite my friends. I know people that need to hear this message. When are you doing this again? That's the kind of memorable you want. There are so many little small things that you can do to make this not just memorable, but really impactful. The point to where you have audience members saying, listen, I'm a different person. I'm a better person because I heard this. I was here. I participated. Again, when are you doing this? I want to bring my friends. That's the kind of information versus transformational speaking I'm talking about. Informational speaking is you get up, you've got a lectern, you've got regurgitating information. I got to tell you, I cannot remember a single keynote that I heard in high school and college, except for one. There was one keynote. I'll tell you about it. Every other one, think about it. Do you remember? Do you remember any of the lectures from college? Do you remember any of the lectures from high school? And if you do, why? I'll never forget one keynote that I had from John, by the way. He was my Book of Mormon instructor over in college here. And he was delivering this lecture from class, the beginning of class, and he brought in this jar. All right. And in this jar, he put a bunch of sand and he put a bunch of gravel in there. And then he had these big old rocks that wouldn't fit in the jar. And he demonstrated it to us. OK, then he dumped everything out. He had these little buckets where each sized item would fit. So he took the big rocks out and dumped out the gravel in one bucket, dumped off the sand into another bucket. And he said, watch this. Many of you feel like you don't have time. And it's because you're putting things that don't matter first. You're playing your games. You're on your phone. It doesn't matter. If you put the most important things in your day first, and then he put the big rocks in, and then he said, then you put the next most important things, and then they put the gravel in around that. And then he put the next most important thing, and then he put the sand in around that. Already the jar is holding more than it did before. And then you put the least most important things in, and then he poured a pitcher of water into this jar. Never would have fit before, totally would have spilled out. He fit all of that into this jar because he put the biggest, most important stuff in first. And I remember this. I'll never forget this. And then this is one of the reasons that I remember lots of chemistry classes, because there was like chemical reactions happening in front of me. They were so cool, right? When you speak, you want the same effect on your audience. That doesn't mean you have to be a chemistry expert. That doesn't mean you have to be some visual aid expert, but it does mean that your audience needs to be different and better off because they were with you. When I saw that jar, I'll remember that forever. I'll remember that. Like, this is how I literally look. If I were to show you my planner right here, this is how I plan my days. I literally put the most important things in first, and then I put check boxes next to them, and then the next most important things and the next most important things. So my kids get on my schedule first, then my business gets on my schedule, all of these things. I make time because I remember this experiment, this jar that was in front of me in this classroom. So how do you do this? That's the question. How do you create transformation? I'm going to walk you through the steps right now. First of all, you need to create what are called state changes in your keynote. State changes are things that change the energy state of the room. Silence can be a state change. Laughter can be a state change. Giving your people an assignment in room right there. Like if I were to say, pull out a notebook right now and write something down that you know you need to get done before the end of the day today. By the way, you should pause this video and do that. That's a state change too. So you're changing the state of the energy of your audience. Your audience is doing something different with their bodies every 90 seconds. I know that sounds like a lot, but trust me on this. It's way easier to do in the room, and it's kind of relieving too, because then you don't have the pressure of just this lecture the whole time. So number one is state changes. Number two is what I call an experience or an activity, something that the audience can watch or participate in. I'm talking about that jar example. I'm talking about a physics example. I'm talking about some kind of a demonstration. And back when we were at church, we called them object lessons, things with a memorable piece in it. And you can incorporate that into your keynote, but you might not have one ready. So you know what? Go to as many presentations as you can. Go to workshops, go watch these things, go look for these little object lessons, and you may be inventing your own. One of my favorite ones to do is I'm going to give this away. I've never told anyone where I got this before, but I was in, where was I? I was in high school, and I was in our science class, and Mrs. Weaver, oh no, it wasn't Weaver's, Dory Walker. Dory, thank you for this object lesson. This was a cool one. So I remember Dory, Miss Walker, she put a loaf of bread out, and she put a peanut butter jar out, and she put a jam out, and then she put a couple of butter knives out, and she laid the table down with a cloth over the top of everything, and then she had this big reveal. And she was teaching us about the order of operations, and she had a kid get up, and that she had this kid make a sandwich. But it was a little different. The kid wasn't actually doing the work. He was just explaining to Miss Walker how to make the sandwich. And she was following directions, but she was doing a piss poor job of it. And it was hilarious. I took that demonstration and I thought, what other lessons can I learn from this? Oh my gosh, I can teach people how to do calls to action using this process. So oh my gosh, I can't talk today. When you come to my events, you might see me do this process. I've been doing it for years, where I bring a jar of peanut butter, a jar of jam, I bring a loaf of bread, and I bring a couple butter knives and some drop cloths because it makes a huge mess. But the whole process is learning about how to do a call to action effectively. And this is something that I have been invited to come do on other stages because it sticks with people. No pun intended. There's a huge mess, but it sticks with people and it's memorable. And trust me when I tell you, most speakers will not be able to pull this off. I'm not talking that it has to be on this grand of a scale, but this experiential exercise, the reason you will stick out is that most speakers will not be able to pull this off within their keynote. This call to action, this experience will make you truly unique, truly memorable, and it will be one of the things that gets you invited to more stages. I'm going to give you two more things that are going to make your keynote memorable in the best way you possibly can imagine. Number one is an anchor moment or an anchor phrase. Mel Robbins, if you listen to her podcast, she has created an anchor phrase so much so, I checked her Instagram the other day, people are getting this phrase tattooed on them. It's like, and sending her pictures. She shared them on her Instagram. And this is the phrase, let them. She's written a book called Let Them. She's got a whole theory entitled The Let Them Theory. When you let people just show up the way they're going to show up and you get to show up authentically to yourself, that's called the Let Them Theory. Mel Robbins has that as an anchor. And what this does is this little earworm that lives rent-free in your brain, and it has you call back to this let them. And this is not a thing that Mel uses to get people to remember Mel. She's using this to help people remember to act authentically to themselves. My anchor shouldn't be one that helps people remember how cool Marianne is. My anchor should be one that helps people remember how cool they are. That's when it's a true anchor. Then the last thing you want to do is a call to action. And I'm talking about the official call to action where people have something from you that they get to then take with them later on. And a call to action can be simple, like, I want you to message me on Instagram when you've tried this. I want you to download this guide on how to be an amazing public speaker. Now, here's my call to action for you. I've got a book with all of these 10 steps in it. If you go to mariannehickman.com/free gift, you're going to get this book. This does two things. One, it's going to keep us connected because now I can send you emails. Number two, you just get the value. I don't care if you unsubscribe from the email list or not. You get to take this book on the 10 steps of an amazing signature keynote presentation and take it with you so that you become a better speaker. That's what I want. I want good people with powerful messages to become better speakers, which is why I give all this stuff away. So that's how I want you to make your keynote memorable. I want you to have the sticky factor. I want your audience to be affected positively, and I want you to be invited to more stages. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next episode. Take care. Marianne Hickman here again. Listen, I hope super helpful for you. Maybe you learned something new. Share with me in the comments what was valuable. Or if you have this whole separate question like, hey, I wanted to know about this. I wanted to know about stage fright. I want to know how about my presentation on stage. I want to know about how to dress on stage. Anything that you want to know that's relevant to growing your business through stages, put in the questions. Because guess what? I go through and answer
all of those personally. That's not an agency or a VA. That's me going through and looking at your questions because you are who I am here for. So last thing is I want you to get this database. If you haven't gotten it already, now I've got thousands of downloads on this thing, so maybe you've got it, but if not, make sure you go to mariannehickman.com/database. What that's going to do is take you to a page. You're going to input all of your information. We're going to send the database to you. You're going to request access to it. I keep it locked down so I can make sure I get it to just the right people. And you're going to request access. And then once you have that, you're going to go through and apply to podcasts that have the topic that you'd be an expert speaking on. Here's the thing. I get this database updated twice a week. So there's always new stuff in there. And if you're a podcaster, there's even a list of guests that you can have on your show on that podcast. Maybe you end up doing a podcast swap and you grow your audience that way. Regardless, I want you to get it. So mariannehickman.com/database, and we'll see you in the next Talk Tips.